welcome to Brewsers, a podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I am your host, Rody John, and today we speak to Colt Power from Power BioPharm. We talk all about how they got started, to cannabis laws in Texas, and how they're helping people with medical needs. This is all about the wonderful plant that is the cannabis plant and its benefits and its laws here in this great state of Texas. Obviously, if you're listening to this from another state, your laws can be completely different. And this is just trying to get even more information out there about this absolutely wonderful plant that helps so many people, from people with AIDS to people with cancer to people with, every kind of injury and unfortunately disease in between. So this is a wonderful plant. As you heard on our 420 episode, we heard from the California side of it. Now we get to hear from the Texas side of it. I obviously would love to talk to everybody from every state that is either legal or not legal when it comes to this wonderful plant. But there are so many rules, and obviously here in America, we need to be more on the same page, and we need to be more open when it does come to this wonderful plant. So this is just a sampling of what's happening here in Texas, so that way you get some kind of knowledge as to what is going on. So we'll get to Colt here in a second, but make sure to sign up for our newsletter. It is so wonderful. You get even more information about our guests. You get information about fun facts, and also more information about the great podcast that you listen to that's all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. So without further ado, here is Colt Power with Power BioPharm. I'd like to welcome to the show Colt Power. He was with Power BioPharm. How are you doing today?
Doing great.
Now, for those that don't know, can you tell us a little bit about what Power BioPharm is?
Power BioPharms is an indoor hemp cultivator, and we do it. And we're an extraction lab and a hemp CBD product manufacturer.
Very nice.
And so, yeah, we do everything from grow it, turn it into a concentrate that is something we can formulate with, and make end products. So
yeah. Now, right now, we are also drinking the Martin House collaboration y'all did with the Power Sour. Yep. Let's go into that briefly. How did that come together? Because I know this came up for their 420 release. Mm-hmm. So I guess let's talk about that for a little bit.
So I had one of my motivations in starting the company, besides kind of just like my love for cannabis and the plant and some of the kind of healing that it can provide, was the potential for culture, like within cannabis, similar to like the breweries and distilleries.
Right. Kind
of getting like being a local provider, and a place that someone can come see and tour and whatever. And
right.
Martin House had been one of the places that kind of inspired me, like their whole logo, even the For Texans by Texans.
Right.
And before we even got it started, I kind of had this goal of like I want to work with them somehow. And it took us a while to kind of get our feet under us, but I honestly just went and knocked on their door and showed up with a big box of gummies, and was like, hey, I don't know exactly what it would look like, but I want to figure out how we can work together on something. And we just hit it off, and they were fantastic to work with. And we did that kind of dual collaboration where they took one of our more popular gummy flavors and turned it into a sour beer. And so it's prickly pear watermelon was the gummy, and they made it a sour prickly pear watermelon and brought in some hemp terpenes into the beer, and then we made a sour gummy to kind of match it.
And it's delicious.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's like a sour Jolly Rancher is what it makes me think of. Yeah.
They've killed it with the sour game, and obviously a bunch of other crazy stuff, however you want to really look at it. But their basics are fantastic as well. I always say that to no matter who's listening. Their basics are amazing, and then they can go off the rails and do like a ranch or pizza or whatever the hell they want to do.
I could tell from some of the flavors they created and some of their social media that like we just had a similar sense of humor, at least. and like I'd say that they'd mentioned cannabis or Delta 8 in some of their social before, and I was like, I think these guys might be our guys.
Now, how did BioPharm come to be? Because in Texas, we'll get into it in a second, but the laws are a little weird when it comes to cannabis and all of that. But let's go back to how this all started for you.
Sure. So I had been doing commercial real estate here in the Fort Worth area from 2012. Since I got back from Notre Dame, I started that in 2012. I was doing that through COVID, and my specialty had been working with people in their office space.
Right.
And when COVID hit, my wife is a medical ICU nurse, and she was working like 6 days a week.
Yeah.
full time. She was at Parkland.
Oh, wow.
So she was working like the COVID unit for the biggest hospital in Dallas, and it was we had just had our second child, and whatever, pretty big, like just
there are a lot of hurdles,
life altering, and just kind of was like I want to take this time to think of something else to do, and part of it was I thought I kind of had to because I didn't know what real estate was going to look like.
True,
when all that was going on.
Like, it's all virtual, or we all using robots? Like, what's the
and so I had been an athlete through college, and really like had post college found that cannabis really helped me get moving again. My mom's had MS, and my dad's had 19 orthopedic surgeries.
Jeez.
And I'd seen just kind of for MS particularly, and then for chronic pain, some of the potential that the plant had versus the traditional treatments that so many people are having problems with. And I don't know, a lot of things just kind of lined up, and it was right around that same time. I think it was after the 2019 session or something. It was during 2020 that Texas adopted the agriculture department adopted like a hemp program.
Yeah. And
so it was the first time you legally could grow hemp in Texas.
Right.
And that's when it kind of overlapped. Where it's like, okay, this is something that's I think a blossoming industry and a blossoming like field of medicine that's really interesting.
Yeah.
But now it's available in Texas.
Yes.
And I like to think that even if there's people producing it in Colorado or California or whatever and shipping it here, the same way that people like supporting local breweries and distilleries, if I'm making it here, people are going to help get behind it too. So that was kind of the impetus for it. And
So have you guys always been in this facility, or did you guys kind of start maybe like in a garage and then move, or how did that all work?
Started in the media room in my house. I moved the sofa out, took all the speakers off the ceiling so I could put a grow tent in there. Started with a 2x4 grow tent, then I got a 4x8. Got up to maybe 50 or 60 plants, and I was just doing everything I could to learn as much as possible. I read like this cannabis encyclopedia. I listened to books on tape. I was learning everything I could because I didn't know yet. Like, okay, I know I want to include the farm, but like, do I want to just be a farm? Do I want to be a farm and a lab, or do I want to make products? I didn't know. I don't know. I was just trying to learn as much as possible. Learned pretty quickly that if you're going to do it, you got to do it bigger than that.
Yeah.
and I've always kind of liked the idea of like putting a challenge on myself, and like
That's awesome.
If I put something out there, I'll rise to meet it. And through my commercial real estate connections, I knew this warehouse space that's not very far from my house was available for sublease, about half the price of what it should have been on a 2-year term.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, I'll take this on and we'll figure it out. And that kind of like made the jump.
Yeah.
And we moved in, and I hadn't even met Nick yet, our master grower. And it was shortly after I moved in here that we got connected, and he came over and saw that I had like this big place with like 20 plants in it, and didn't know what I was doing at that. And so our partnership was formed.
Very nice.
And that was So I started we started the company. My wife and I started in October, November of 2020. Moved in here in February 21. Met Nick in March. So within about 6 months, it all kind of started to happen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, let's touch on the laws real fast, because again, like I was telling you before, I was talking to people about coming here, and they're like, "That's legal in Texas?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is. It's part of that, like you were saying, the agricultural, the farm bill." But let's go into the laws of Texas at the moment, so that people can kind of have somewhat of an idea as to where we can start, and then I want to go into the plant because I'm a giant enthusiast of what cannabis can do, and like you said, you've seen it so much with your own family, and we've seen it so much with athletes in general. LeBron James, his recovery company that he owns, has even breaking it down to where he's helping himself, and the guy's almost 40 and still killing it. So yeah. So let's go in, I guess, what the laws of Texas are for right now, so that people can kind of have an idea.
Yeah. So everything that we do under Power BioPharms is under the hemp program that was originally made legal by the 2018 Farm Bill. Texas adopted it, I guess, on the retail product form in 2018, and then eventually they adopted the ag portion of it, in 19 or 20.
Right.
But that means that anything that's 0.3% or less THC is legal, and that's what we're held to when we grow the plant, and that's what we're held to whenever we make a consumer-ready finished product.
Right.
And everything has to be lab tested. As a cultivator, it has to be tested pre-harvest to make sure 30 days pre-harvest is they come out and take a sampling, and then we have, as soon as they take that cutting, we have 30 days. Well, first it has to be a an acceptable sampling. So if we're above 0.3% at that point, we have to destroy the crop. We don't get to go to harvest. Yeah, there's no remediation. Some states have remediation programs where if it's hot, you can basically like grind it up, extract it, and dilute it. But we don't have that here. And it's happened we've had probably close to 30 harvests in this facility now. I think six were, and we were experimenting with new strains. Right. And some of them, there is a time factor. I was telling you when we were walking through the farm that like some you harvest at 9 weeks, some you harvest at 8 weeks. And it's just, you got to know like how to test. Sorry, we'll go off on a sidetrack there. But,
no, you're fine. I mean, people want to know these kind of things, so yeah.
Yeah, but it's, I guess, long story short, it's easy. It's a very tight threshold. Like even to even be able to grow, you have to get a lot permit. First, you have to get a license to grow it, then you have to get a permit for the specific strain that's on an approved list. So Texas, basically, you have to submit a bunch of tests to the state.
Wait, there's certain strains that they allow and certain strains they don't. Why is that?
That's because when they approve a new strain, someone's basically had to give lab reports showing that, hey, look, we grew this on 3 different occasions or at 3 different farms, and all 3 times the 30-day pre-harvest test was compliant.
Right.
And so basically the state can expect this shouldn't be making a bunch of non-compliant plants.
Right.
Because it's just not good for everybody when it, yeah. I guess they get more license fees, but
which they love.
Yeah. But yeah. So there's a pre-approved strain, and then we have to get the lot permit for each lot, and then that's how they track all the timing for coming out to test it, and when we harvest, and then from that we make an extract, turn it into a product, and then again before we actually go to sell it back to the public, we have to have it tested and prove that at that point you have to prove not only that it is a compliant level of THC, but you have to prove that it has no pesticides, no heavy metals, no microbial pathogens, and no residual solvents.
Damn.
So yeah, it's all really good stuff.
Right,
and like in a space that on the hemp side, I really think there needs to be more regulation, and we'll get to the cannabis law side in a minute. There needs to probably be some less there.
Right.
But I think all the testing is a good thing. It's just expensive.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I know that Delta 8, Delta 9, and I believe Delta 10 is legal in Texas. Mm-hmm. Now, for those that don't know, because again, the wonderful thing about this plant is that you can break it down to so many different levels. Can you explain to people what the Delta 8, 9, and 10 really are?
Yes. Yeah, so while we're still talking on that this whole less than 0.3%, the law that made the hemp program a thing and makes our whole industry a thing is that with the language of it is less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC.
Right.
And that specific language is important because Delta 8 THC and Delta 10 THC do naturally occur in the plant at very small levels.
Right.
So they're not something that is 100% synthetic. Mm-hmm. However, everything on the market is being chemically converted from CBD into Delta 8 and Delta 10. They give very, very similar effects to Delta 9 THC, which is the naturally occurring. That's what in a normal marijuana product, the active ingredient is Delta 9 THC.
Right.
Yeah. And basically because that letter of the law was as specific as it was, that said it's 0.3% or less of this version of THC. Anything that is Delta 8 or Delta 10, there's no cap on the amount.
Okay.
And basically through the processes, you can grow a field of hemp that has mostly all CBD in it, extract it all, and refine it into a pure CBD process, and then do a chemical wash. You need a professional chemist at this point to do this conversion, but they can convert it into these THCs, and at no point in that process was it a high Delta 9 product. And so it's those are, until they change the law, pretty inarguably legal kind of across all 50 states, except for at this point some of the states have made those compounds illegal. Yeah. But Texas hadn't yet. Yeah.
True. Yeah, I know that there was some argument, I think it was sometime earlier last year, that they were like, Delta 8s are going to be illegal. And I was like, they're not. But
in this last legislation that just ended a week ago, there was a bill that was supposed to expand our very restrictive medical marijuana program, which is the other side of the legality that we didn't quite get to talking to yet, but does exist. That was going to add chronic pain and make it much more accessible to people who wanted it. That didn't get through, and there's another bill that was going to make Delta. I think the language was any synthetic